Hi, and welcome to another episode of You're in Charge. Now what? I'm your host, Glenn Pasch, and the goal of this channel is to help those of you that find yourself now in charge of an initiative, a project, or a team build the skills necessary to generate the results that you're looking for. Each week, we're going to focus just on one topic. I'm going to bring a guest in or just talk about it with you personally, and we're going to give you some tactical tips and strategies to help you be able to accomplish everything you're trying to do. Now, if you're new to the channel, just please click subscribe. It means a lot to me. And if you like what you hear, please share it out with a friend, tell a friend about it, because that's our goal, is to help a lot of people out there who need this type of education. So without further ado, I am going to introduce my guest, Aharon Horwitz, and he is the CEO of AutoLeadStar and co-founder of this. So much I want him to talk about it because this company does so many great things. But welcome to the podcast. I can't wait to dive in with you today.
Thanks, Glenn. It's great to be here.
Yeah,
really
great.
Excited.
Yeah. So do me a favor, just take 30 seconds. I know I told people your title, but tell them a little bit about your company and about your journey, and then we'll dive right in.
Yeah, I'm originally from Cleveland, and I feel like I am privileged to be from Cleveland because, among other things, in addition to having a winning football team right now,
Yes,
Cleveland has a lot of car dealerships. And I, growing up, had very little connection to the auto industry, but it was always there in kind of an ambient background. And a few years ago, myself and a couple friends launched a technology company whose mission really was to provide small and medium businesses with powerful technology that can enable their digital commerce. So
right.
you think of that journey going from bricks and mortar to clicks and bricks, and our feeling was at the time that your typical SMB that has to compete with major enterprises that have very, very significant teams and the most advanced technology, it was extremely asymmetric. And our question for ourselves was whether we could build technology that would be competitive, could be operated by a small and medium business, and essentially do the things in marketing and sales enablement that they would need. And that really brought us to this journey. Interestingly, we had no concept we were going to end up in the auto industry, if you'd asked me, say, like 5.5 years ago. But luckily, through just a stroke of luck, about, 4 or 5 years ago, we stumbled into auto and went through this unbelievable transformation where we really became this dealer tech company. And so what we provide at AutoLeadStar is all the marketing and sales services that you would want as a dealership, but we do it with software and automation such that we hope it becomes a kind of ambient platform and service where the dealers can benefit from tech, bring their own knowledge and strategy and experience in car selling to the table, and let our technology do the work of translating that into ads, into emails, into data, and so on and so forth. So that's the company. It's been really exciting, good journey. Love the industry, huge education. Feel so blessed that we found automotive, and here we are.
Yeah, we sort of did the same thing with marketing. Our digital advertising agency. We that was the one vertical that grew more than others. And automotive's a fun place. It's a lot bigger than people think of. They think of just that dealership in my town versus this billion dollar industry.
No, but it's tremendous.
So I wanted to what I wanted to chat with you about, because part of the reason why we connected, and in knowing your company and researching this, I think one of the things that businesses, right, not just automotive, but businesses are dealing with, and as you said, the clicks and bricks, and there's now so many businesses that don't have bricks. It's all clicks. But it's this idea of personalizing the customer journey, customer experience, right? When we deal with the large companies, Amazons and things, they remember who we were, and hey, here's all your things that you came and looked at last time, or recommendations of people who looked at this, and we've become so used to it. But in automotive and in small and medium-sized businesses, to compete with that, what I'm fascinated with is this idea of, well, how do I do this, right? So in your mind, to start it off, when I say the words personalizing the customer experience, what does that mean to you?
You know, so first of all, I think about personalizing the customer experience. I also think about personalizing the operator experience, right? Because I think, you know, every person needs to use technology differently,
Right.
and ultimately you want technology to work for you, not for you to work for technology. When it comes to the customer and the customer journey, um, I would say this. I mean, I think it's the difference between like billboards on the internet and the type of conversation you have when you're an experienced salesperson
Right.
working in a showroom, and you watch someone walk in and you see that person either be hesitant or be super comfortable or look like they know what they're talking about or not. And you walk
Right.
up to them and you have a vision of, okay, they're standing over there, they're looking at this car, they are behaving in a certain way. I have certain indicators that my, you know, spider sense as a salesperson is telling me, oh, I know what to do for this person. And I can get a one-to-one customer journey going with this person. And I think the challenge in most marketing up till recently is that it worked. Marketing worked well when customers were willing to go through the pain of 7 visits to showrooms, right? So
Right.
if you're willing to walk into 7 showrooms and give 7 people a chance to sell to you in a personal way, great, that works. The minute people said, I don't want to go into 7 showrooms, I want to go into 1 or 2,
Right.
and your marketing is still billboards on the internet, right? And it's one size fits all. You're essentially have all these really intelligent salespeople sitting around who know how to have those one-to-one experiences, but no one's going to ever come into their store, right? So the whole
Right.
mission, I think, of modern marketing and modern technology is to try to get the experience for the customer to be as like relevant as possible. Otherwise, you're as a proprietor of a business, you're not going to get their attention and get them what they need. You're also kind of wasting the time and the eye hours of shoppers. And so that I think is that's the meaning of personalization, is to try to figure out, based on all sorts of tools and techniques that are frankly mainly maintained by the big platforms like Google and Facebook
Right.
and others, to get the most relevant thing to the most relevant person. For you to do that as a business owner, you have to be pushing as much of your inventory, your data, your insight, giving that to the platforms in a smart way so that they know what to do with it.
But then how, okay. So and I think this is sort of the struggle that business dealers, if we want, let's stay in automotive because that's a good example, because it's in a transition. And I think customers want more of what they get from other businesses. Again, we all easily point to Amazon, but they want that convenience of being able to speed up the process. And I think you're 100% correct. Our time is valuable. I was listening to a podcast, the Pivot podcast with Scott Galloway and Kara Swisher, and he was talking about companies creating time machines, right? Valuing your time. So thinking of how I can save time, but with that expectation from a consumer standpoint. But then on the other hand, they're saying, well, I don't want you to track my data, keep my data, value, all of my behavior. So how do you see that being this? I think that's sort of two thoughts that are combative. I want you to personalize my experience, remember everything, but at the same moment in time, I don't want you tracking me. How do you see that sussing out in the future?
I don't know how it will suss out necessarily, right? Or I don't necessarily have a clear view on it. My attitude on those things on a personal level or on a kind of philosophical level is that there has to be a bright line between what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And again, there's levels where it becomes a legal and moral case,
Right.
but generally it should be the polity, meaning if you think about, I don't know, U.S. law or kind of the United States as a polity, right?
Right.
There should be elected representatives who say, for the comfort of our citizens who we represent, this is where that line is, and we're now going to hold the corporations accountable to that line. And I think we see that, and we see that being discussed. And I think that's a great thing. I think it should apply. It applies in many cases as well, right? You think about labor and cost, right? There's that trade-off. On the one hand, I don't think anyone who looked and saw the conditions in a factory that's producing their technology would feel comfortable saying, oh, great, I'm excited. I'm going to watch that person do what they have to do in order to get that piece of tech for, $100, $200 less. But people do it all the time because you just kind of go along with your day and you just buy your tech, and no one thinks that global of a scale. That's the job of, again, our elected representatives and whatnot. And so my personal opinion on that is that it is very important to kind of keep a very close eye on, on surveillance, on data collection, on that aspect of the economy. From our perspective as AutoLeadStar, and I think from your perspective as a marketer in the space, you're basically going to take the set of generally accepted tools, which are pretty much run by those marketplaces, and you're going to leverage them for the benefit of your customers. And the goal for us is to make it as easy as possible for our dealers to access those resources and make sure that they're relatively vanilla offering, right? These aren't campaigns, ads. There's nothing sneaky here. It's a car, right? That it's transportation for someone, that their inventory gets the eyeball of that person who, in the middle of the night is on Facebook because their snowplow broke and they need a new snowplow, and there's a truck sitting 3 miles away in the back of a lot that they could buy. Well, we want them to see that ad. Why? Because they need that, right? And that's, I think, the way that we approach it. Like, we're trying to help the customers. We're trying to help the businesses make that match. We see ourselves as matchmakers. And, as long as we do that, we'll do it with whatever tools are available that don't cross ethical lines. And we'll use those platforms. So
well, what I like about that concept, and I personally feel this way as a marketer, is I don't want to spam and shove ads at people who aren't relevant. Again, that's what happens, when we're watching TV, so to speak. There's an ad that comes up for whatever product, pick any product, and you know that only a small percentage, this applies only to a small percentage of people, but I have to push it out to the broad audience. Where, to your point, with this idea of efficiency and effectiveness, is I can find out the people who are in, quote unquote, in market, and I can serve that. So I have this conversation with dealer clients that are saying, why are you sending an ad about tires to someone who just bought a car 6 months ago? They're not looking for tires. Now, the response was, well, maybe they have another car, or maybe they know somebody. I said, but we are now in the day and age of, if it's relevant to me, I will see ads all day. I don't want to see ads that are not relevant to me. So I think, to your point, is knowing where they are in the journey. But I like some of the companies now that are saying, do you want to opt in to share your data versus you have to force me to opt out of the data collection? I think that's a good pivot, because then there are going to be people who say, sure, show me ads that are relevant to me. I need that. That helps me. That saves me time.
It seems like obvious to us, I think, as, individual human beings, that we should have the right to opt in rather than out of all of our data being collected and leveraged.
Right.
The internet didn't grow up that way, right? And that was sort of the way the ad networks evolved, was essentially collecting every single thing they possibly could, which is, by the way, wasn't invented on the internet, as you know. It was invented in the credit card business, and was invented in all the other kind of consumer touch points. If you get a hold of your data file from some of these major data aggregators, you see unbelievable amounts of personalized data. There are companies that, even when you think you're off grid and you're incognito and all that stuff, they know exactly where you live and what you're doing on the internet. It's quite frightening, and I think any protection that comes around will be to the benefit. I still think that, in general, the ability to advertise to people on the internet will continue to exist, and companies like ours, companies like yours and others will provide the best possible services for our clients to access those platforms in the most efficient and effective way. And I think, when you look at Google and Facebook today, in particular, being like the two of the largest, the kind of the Uber network, so to speak, they're advancing at light speed, and they are pushing folks who do marketing to stay up. They will sometimes give a tool to try to help people stay up with where they are. But I think it's pretty clear that, it's no longer the case that a dealer can, on their own, with just, hiring a person or two, be successful at fully exploiting all that they have to offer and all that the ad platforms have to offer. And I think that's the evolution of the next gen is going to be that type of understanding that, look, you've got someone who wants a tire after 6 months. That's the case. I don't know why they want it, where they want it, but there are signals out there that say this person wants it. So you want that ad there. You don't need to think about that. You should
right.
Make it happen if that's the case, because they have another car or something blew out or who knows what, or maybe they just want better tires. There's always those signals that you want to seize on, and technology is what helps you do that and automate that and take that pressure off the dealer, even the pressure to have that conversation.
So let's go down that road here for a moment. What's in your mind, dealers? Is it that dealers don't understand this personalization? Because we see some of, website platforms trying to mimic that now. So if I looked at trucks the last time I was on the website, when I come back, I see trucks. Do they really understand what this means? Do they even care? And I don't mean it to be that they don't care, but is it just, I don't understand it. So hence, or I've never seen it really happen in our industry. So I'm just doing business the way I am. But what are the conversations you have with dealer clients or potential customers for you when you start talking about this and they go, I just need to sell cars. I don't understand it.
I find they totally understand it. At least in my experience, they all want that. I think every dealer in the back of their mind is looking at, what happens in, say, grocery and Instacart, and was looking at what happened even in auto with like a Carvana Vroom type of play, which is only a small fraction of the industry, but it indicates the potential of doing things more digitally. I think every dealer is in the back of their head saying, well, how do I become a tech company, or how do I become a digital first retailer that leverages my brick and mortar location as part of my strategy, but I'm not limited by it, so to speak. What I think, though, the big problem, and this is the problem in our industry, is that if I'm a dealer, I don't want to have to care about it. Meaning, I think about this about a car. I don't have the first idea of what's happening under the hood when I turn on my car and I start to drive. It just works. And you know what? When I used to talk to my father about this, when my father kind of grew up in a different era of cars, he said back then he spent a lot of time at the gas station underneath the hood, fixing things up and tinkering around. I'm like, if I did that today, I'd break the whole car. Meaning they're high-tech functioning computers that drive.
You're basically driving a computer.
You're driving a computer. So we've evolved our technology to the point where it's ambient. It just works for us in the background and gets the job done. Same thing, by the way, in other areas. Like, I think about phones. I remember, in high school, being on a corded phone in my bedroom, asking my mother to get off because I was waiting for a call from my girlfriend. Yep. And but I would wait at home for a call. Now I walk around with my cell phone. When someone wants to call, they call. If someone misses me, they get me on WhatsApp. Technology that works for someone gets out of the way, and it just works in the way that they naturally want. So I think dealers are phenomenal at selling cars. I think dealers are phenomenal at building product and customer experiences. The advertising and marketing and sales enablement technology that we offer and others offer should essentially work as ambient and let them do their thing and be successful. And it should be like driving a car. They shouldn't have to know about the computer underneath. That's my personal opinion.
No, but I think that's true. I mean, what I love about your point is the dealers want to get to more digitized. I've been, my brother and I, we've been working with dealers for the last 2 years on this whole concept of, call it digital retailing, modern retailing, remote retailing, whatever you want to call it, where they have to let go of their processes that they held so dealer. To your point is, everybody had to come to the dealership to buy a car. So that way I can look you in the eye. I know you're more serious because you're here versus this idea of, well, if you're on the website, you're really not serious. You're shopping versus buying. They're evolving now to your point of leveraging technology to be able to say, customer, do as much as you want, and then I'm here to help you. And then when you come here, your journey picks up where you left off when you get here, versus everything starts when they get here. But the other point that you touched on was there's a lot of people out there claiming they do this, right? So if I'm a dealer, put yourself in their shoes. they're believing. If we're going to, I agree with you as well. I think they want this personalized journey. They want to be able to make it easier for their customers. They want to be able to provide, as you said when we first started, if I look at you, there's signals to me that say you're this, maybe, at least I'm going to start my guess that this is where you are based on what I see. Now, some people will say, well, that's profiling or whatever, but it's the way that we judge, the way that we start conversations. We have to make assumptions. So they want to do this, but now they're sitting there at that desk. And to your point is they don't want to get into it. They know they can't do it themselves. They have to trust somebody. What should they be asking the person who's sitting across from them, claiming, making their sales pitch that their technology is going to do all this? From a dealer's perspective, what questions would you say, here's how you start, here's what you need to ask?
It's very, very challenging. I don't have an easy answer. I think you've been, you've been, pushing for a decade now to create standards, to create measurements, to create, benchmarks. I just think the industry is lacking it's just lacking that framework for dealers to be successful in working with vendors. I think it's very challenging to figure out what someone's really offering, what's going on under the hood, what's the real value that you're getting. And I think the dealers are in a challenging place. And frankly, vendors are in a challenging place because we want to, I think most people who are athletes want a benchmark, want a standard, want referees, want frameworks, because that's how you essentially are able to excel by being quote unquote the best at something. I don't know. It's a big challenge. I think about it all the time because, we came into auto from outside of auto, and I felt like I walked into the middle of a post-traumatic stress situation where, every dealer I talked about would open up with these stories of all these horrible things that happened with these different vendors and these things that they used. And I was like, wow, that is just horrible to hear that. And how do you ever make a decision and be comfortable after you go through something like that? So I don't have an answer to that very challenging question. The only thing I could say is that I would encourage the whole industry. I wouldn't encourage the whole industry. What would be helpful is if, we kind of tried to get down to some sort of measurement around, we like to talk internally at AutoLeadStar about cost per quality lead. That for us is a big thing.
Right.
Because, we're trying to bring leads from all sorts of different areas. And when you kind of zoom in, you create this cost per quality lead, and you try to actually figure out, well, how many leads were generated from a very narrow segment of what can be tracked or assumed to within very tight confines.
Right.
And, maybe that's a benchmark that for us works. And we try to use that with dealers to say, look, personalization or the types of technologies that we offer, the services we offer, they get you this cost per quality lead versus maybe a more billboardy approach or a more broad scattershot approach. You're going to be in this cost per quality lead. You're going to get more brand versus VIN or model specific. You're going to get all that stuff is what we talk about with dealers. I don't know if it's penetrating yet or if it makes sense for the dealers. In the end of the day, I also hope that down the road there will be some efforts from we just got into an OEM program,
right?
And what was so interesting to me is my experience of getting to this OEM program is how many rules and regulations and structures and things we had to abide by, and how much we had to open up, which I thought was great. It would be interesting if the OEM started saying, well, hey, we want everyone in our programs to have a proper API. Proper API. You need to have a proper API if you want to be in our program. And that API has to have, the following, endpoints, whatever. And it's creating some ways for data to come out of the platforms and whatnot could maybe help. But I don't know. I feel like you're the one who should be answering this question because I don't have an answer.
Yeah,
and we'll work at it forever.
I think to your point about the programs, congratulations, by the way, because they're not easy to get into. I think they should do as much work as they do to vet people to get in, to vet them to stay in. I don't think a lot of the programs, and this is a whole side conversation we could have or a whole nother program, is this idea that I don't know if they're measuring those results, right? So you're going into the program saying, we can do all of this. Is anybody auditing you 6 months later or a year later to say, did you really deliver this? Or is it all hype? If I'm good at the hype, hey, I got in. or I have great connections. But to your point is, what's the metric, the measurement that we're holding these folks accountable to? So if you're a website platform, what does that mean? If you're a lead generation product, what does that mean? What are the metrics that we can look at and compare you to measure your results? Or else are you in just a program and people are frustrated because it's not working? So to me, I think dealers should just try to hopefully keep it as simple as possible, right? So if I was sitting there talking with you and you're telling me, here, I can all do this, what does that mean in simple language, right?
Yeah.
Give me an example. I'm a customer John Smith out there. Walk me through how your product works or gets his attention. He's looking for a car, right? We'll make that assumption. He's looking for the car. How do I do that? Right?
Yeah,
What does your product
absolutely.
do? I think that makes it more tangible for dealers, because you're right. They don't want to look at analytics in the hood and all of these influences and signals. They basically want to know how many people are you generating for me to do my presentation to, right? In a very simple way. Can I get more opportunities for us to do our business? And how do you do that in a way that I can understand?
100%. Yeah, and I think their dealers actually, what would be helpful, I think, for dealers would be to sort of, even if you're not sure if it's the right benchmark, be like, first of all, do what you just said, get that clear understanding of what's actually happening. But then I think it's interesting to say, okay, look, here's where I was at last year in some metric that's in the world that you're telling me you're about to work on. Let's set that as a benchmark. Let's see if you could beat it. Let's see if you could double it, if you could 3x it.
Right.
And I think that's good for the companies as well, because you want to have a benchmark. You don't want to just go into that conversation 3 months in and say, well, here's like, I don't know, one of our customers, Andrew Walzer, always says, like, a number means nothing unless it's compared to another number. And I like that a lot, because
that's great.
And it's so obvious, but it's like saying it that way just makes it very clear. So we just started recently trying to make sure whenever we go in with a client to just try, if we can, to spend like 20 minutes with them, logging into their historical info, trying to we're asking them to do it, to get us a benchmark that we should go up against, so that we can then have at least an intelligent conversation about where we're at versus where they were.
No, I think
sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Sense. Yeah, I think that makes sense. We've done that as well, where when we're talking to clients and they're saying, well, I spent X amount of dollars, I'll say, okay, give us the same amount of money, right? So, because again, if I want more money, then and I'm generating more, is it because it's more money, or is it because I'm more skilled? Or same thing, if I lower the money and they say, well, I'm only going to give you less, well, then how are you going to compare me apples to apples?
Right.
So I think, to your point, whatever that benchmark is, I had a boss years ago. He didn't want to know all the ins and outs, right? He goes, that's your job. But at the end of the month, he would say, here's the first bag, right? This is what we had last time. At the end of the month, is this bag bigger? Is the new bag bigger than the old bag? And that means we're heading in the right direction. So I think for you, I like that idea. I don't think a lot of people do that. I don't think they come in with claims, but they don't know the benchmark they're competing against. Where it's just like going back to sports. If I'm a head, you're Cleveland, right? You're Cleveland Browns. They got a new head coach, and all of a sudden they knew what they were against, and they drafted, and they could say, well, did we win more this year? Right? It's a very simple, easy benchmark. Right. I'm not sure a lot of people go in. Some companies may not want that. I think that also could be a flag for a dealer if they're not asking the questions to say, okay, what did you get previously, so I know what I'm competing against? They're just coming in with claims of winning. Then it's hard to really measure. And I think dealers, and that's one thing I think dealers do understand in the automotive space, and most business people understand if they're running a successful business, is they understand their numbers. They understand their metrics. Somebody's going over numbers at the end of every month. So this way you can say, did bringing on AutoLeadStar this year help? Did we get more opportunities across everything, right?
That's the name of the game, and I think also those types of, it also helps us understand how the dealer thinks, and if they're gonna, like, we love dealers who will talk about data and look at it, and it's less about their gut feel than even though often gut feel is right, the dealer marketing managers and stuff, but if we know they're going to talk about data, then we kind of feel like, okay, this could be a good customer for us. And we feel like it's a customer we can build a long-term relationship with. We can, be strategic to them. We can, because that's kind of our orientation. We're a very dev tech, partially because of our geographic kind of orientation. We're a very dev tech heavy company, and it helps us when our dealers want to look at data. Not all of them do, and we obviously have lots of customers who don't, and we're happy with those customers. But it does sometimes help us when they're willing to have those conversations.
So let me pivot on to there's two things I want to cover before we wrap up today. But one of them is this idea of you looking at it. So now you're a piece of the marketing journey to help dealers become more efficient, as you said, more customized in their marketing using your tools. Where do you see if we're saying now they have all these technology pieces that they have to play nice in the sandbox, where do you see this going? Do you see more consolidation, do you think, in the industry, where someone like your piece, someone would come to you and say, oh, I have these three pieces, company A has these three pieces, I don't have yours, and then I want to merge it? Do you think this end-to-end solution of, we see acquisitions all the way through, do you think that's beneficial for the industry / dealers, or having the ability to do sort of the Chinese menu? Do you think that works more efficiently?
Well, I think spiritually, I love the way it is now, because I think that automotive is one of the, first of all, let's just put it on the table, right? It's one of the last places in the US where you can really go in and get a good job, grow up, by just the merit of your abilities, and rapidly advance and make the types of resources that can change your life. And there aren't many places where you can get those types of jobs in a retail environment now, right, and have the type of success you can have in auto. I think that's a great thing. Secondly, entrepreneurship is phenomenal in auto. I mean, all the startups and ideas that just come from people who are either on a showroom floor or in the back office, and they're like, hey, I think we could automate this, or I think we could do this in a better way. And next thing you know, they're starting a company. And I think that's a wonderful thing. It reminds me of like the way things, quote unquote, used to be before you needed to have like the resources and or potentially the background to do things today, and say like the more general marketing tech space and whatnot, it's more challenging. So I do think that that's a really awesome aspect of automotive, that there's a lot of energy and entrepreneurship. I do think dealers are a bit suffering from the warp effect of very big entrenched companies not opening their data and opening it up to entrepreneurs. So what that means is you end up with like a tremendous amount of fragmentation, and it's not possible really to succeed. Let's just be honest. If you compare a similar sized business to a car dealer outside of automotive, and you look at the way that they're running their marketing and sales enablement, which is kind of what we all do, right?
Right.
It's so much more streamlined. The data is so much more connected. There's so many more services there to help solve for the interoperability issues and the data portabilities and the extracting and transferring and loading and activating of data. It's just so much simpler to do it than it is in auto, with the many, many different platforms that we have to sign into here, and we have to launch, and we have to turn on, and we have to monitor and manage. And, this thing is covering this and blocking this, and this ad thing is double serving with that thing. And it's unbelievable. So I think it's a real, it's a blessing on the one hand, it's a curse on the other hand, like most things are. Right. And I think that the question is this: there's going to be some ferocious startups emerging. Meaning, I know some of them, and you see them, and there's amazing, cool stuff happening.
There's a
real, powerful technology, powerful automation, powerful leveraging of stuff. Whether or not the stacked players in the industry, we all know who they are, whether or not they believe that those folks are game changers is an interesting question, because they did a round of acquisitions, 10 years ago, right? They bought Haystack, and they bought, CDK did acquisitions, and I don't know, how do they feel? Did that really integrate well? I think that'll to some extent guide decisions here about, how they move. I think it would be to the benefit of dealers if in general there were some emerging like, solution clouds, right? You think about non-auto, there's the Salesforce Marketing Cloud. Salesforce bought over the years, they bought Pardot, they bought ExactTarget, they bought Crux, they bought tons of companies to build the marketing cloud. HubSpot built its own little marketing cloud. They also acquired some companies. Oracle bought Eloqua. Adobe bought Omniture, which became Adobe Target. So everyone's got these marketing clouds. And the nice thing about the marketing clouds or the sales enablement clouds, because all the marketing clouds now have sales clouds, is that you suddenly get like, kind of a single data source. You get like you get modern architecture, then you get a platform that you can plug things into. That's really good for businesses. So again, we come from out of auto, so we sort of saw that emerging before we went into auto, 5 years ago or so. And I imagine that those companies are looking and saying, well, how do we build that whole stack?
Well, CDK obviously tried that, and then it just
with Fortellis.
Fortellis. That I just sort of, you never heard anything beyond it, and I think
Fortellis. Yeah.
Go ahead.
My challenge with Fortellis, which again I think was a really wonderful initiative, I hope it's successful. You could compare that to like a segment type of approach, say out of automotive, segment IO. Fortellis, I think, has made an assumption about vendors and about dealers that we were well, some of us are, but we didn't. But more techie than Fortellis needed you to be really techie, like it was typical MarTech outside of auto,
right?
And frankly, that there was benefit in doing it. Meaning, until name any big CRM or whatever is going to go open its APIs for us, that it's hard for us to work in the way that we want, but they have no incentive to do that. They have no interest in doing that necessarily. Right. So, so CDK should be extremely lauded for trying to lead the way there a bit. And I hope it's successful, but I think the incentive structure and the kind of state of art for the companies wasn't necessarily there. I do think that if one of the big stack players, you saw Cars by, Dealer Inspire, and there's other things going on probably now. And then you saw, Cox with some of its acquisitions, you see what's going on with some of the data players and how they're rolling things up. Right. I think that if they built, they would need an amazingly strong product and tech kind of team and vision to go gel all that stuff together to one coherent cloud, marketing cloud, sales cloud, but they could do it. Will they do it? Can they? I have no idea.
Well, they've been trying. If you look at the Cox, initiative, they've had some of these acquisitions for years. But the problem is, and from my outside viewpoint, is they're finally getting to know this is Cox Automotive, and these are all the pieces. Versus you had all of these, think of it as a kingdom and all these little, fiefdoms, and they all ran their own way, even though they were connected. But they weren't connected internally. And I think to your point is, even in a dealership, very simply, you have the DMS doesn't talk really to the CRM or the desking tool or the back end. And so you have all these disparate players, and they've dominated the market. And to your point, there's no incentive. What's the incentive to do that? Now, the incentive for Cox, or as you were saying, Cars, buying all of this and then integrating all of this and then offering an end-to-end solution to dealers. But still, that's a big haul to make it all work correctly. But internally, leadership, that's a hard one to sell to everybody, because if you have one piece that was a very corporate-esque driven culture to a very creative, hey, we're going to go do whatever, but as long as the product's cool and we'll do it. Those two cultures don't work together, but someone at the top needs to say, this is the way we do it, versus having those two cultures run or try to push those two cultures together. And then that just blows up. So again, I agree.
CDK, interestingly, the head of BK at the top of CDK is a tech, he comes from Intel. I mean, you could see that that's the orientation they have. I think that they decided to kind of divest to some of their more less kind of that direction businesses, like the move to Ensira and whatnot. But I do think that they're like the folks in those companies, as we both know, are very smart. They're very driven. They want to do it. Yep. Whether they can wield it into a cloud that has benefit from it being a end-to-end solution is the major question, and whether they can sell that vision. I think that's leaving an opportunity for companies like ours and others to say, like, if you ask me what we're doing, meaning, first of all, everyone in my company, I hope if someone asks what you're doing, your mission is to help dealers sell their cars. After that, what I wanted them to say is, well, we're trying to build this essentially a commerce enablement, not the shopping cart, whatever, forget the shopping cart, but the end-to-end commerce enablement cloud or platform that is going to do the marketing enablement, so automate all that stuff, make it just work, get all the data organized, line it up, do what that needs to happen. Don't make me mess with that. Just make it work in the background. Do the sales enablement. That's going to include, extra, data and better targeting, better onboarding, all that stuff. And then nurture. We want to nurture people. We want to keep them engaged. We want to give them what they want. So I think like those big companies not yet getting it together is leaving this opportunity for others to create these layers. And we'll see what happens. I don't know. In terms of us, my mission is just my whole orientation is just focused on building, and serving customers, trying to make better products. And we take risks. Like, we make products that sometimes do not succeed, but we believe that like the industry is such that it needs those types of experiments. You need that R&D if you want to solve these problems for dealers. And we trust that those of our products that do succeed will outweigh the ones that don't. And we've been blessed to have some really big successes with some of these automations and marketing and sales enablement stuff.
That's awesome. So that's, and I think, to your point, I think you are doing that. Your company has really stepped up in visibility, have a lot of common clients who use your tools and are very pleased. So you should be very proud of you and your team and what you've been doing. Now, so before we end, I want to wrap this up. Again, thank you so much. This is great. I always ask everybody, because this is, talk a little bit about your journey as well. If someone's starting out, they have this idea, like you said, I had an idea and we started and build it. If somebody came to you, whatever age, and they said, I'm thinking of starting a company, or I'm thinking of starting this project, I have this idea, what was the best lesson you learned, or what was some of the best advice someone gave you that you would pass on to this person?
Wow, really great question. First of all, I think anyone who's been an entrepreneur, and I'm sure you having been in the seat for many years, but you need to really, really, really want to do it, because it's a journey, and it's a lot of ups and downs and the roller coasters, a lot of challenging patches, and it kind of has to be like the only thing, like you can't see yourself doing anything else. Otherwise, probably best to go and take anything you want to accomplish. Pretty much, you can find an easier path than being an entrepreneur.
Right.
So that's one thing I used to joke, like, when people would ask me like, oh, how did you fund your startup? I would like take out, in the early days, I would just take out like my credit card, be like, basically Visa funded it. Thank you, Visa. And I still
thank you,
pay it
Visa.
back. Yeah. But anyways, I would say, look, the thing that I've learned, and this is like obvious, but it's also really challenging. Number one is things that look simple for your customer. Think when you look at a customer issue and you're like, I could solve that much more. No way. There's so much more there underneath the surface that you need to understand. So you should assume that any problem you're looking at solving is literally a tip of the iceberg. And when you think you understand it all, you're still at the tip of the iceberg. And going deeper, putting yourself as deep as possible into the kind of experience, the jobs that the customers are trying to get done that you want to help solve and solve for, you must push and push and push. And before you really jump into the solution side, it really helps to do that and to really get in there and not make assumptions. I read this book when we were starting this company by someone named Gary, I think it's Gary Stephen Blank. It's called 4 Steps to the Epiphany. Very difficult book to read, but it was kind of the basis for like the lean startup model. And it was the much more extensive one. And it's amazing in that book, just reading it, I was like, wow, like all this effort and all these systems just to understand what the product pain is. And this guy lays it out in this unbelievable way. So that was one piece of advice that I got. Sometimes I followed it, sometimes I didn't. I always regretted when I didn't. The other thing is people and the quality of people that you work with. I think that as you're trying to launch things and you're trying to move forward, you're always just, you're hustling, you're moving so fast, and you will never regret like getting that right person, and you will always regret getting that wrong person. And I think that that's something that I've learned over the years is surround yourself with just good people, and don't compromise on that, or you'll pay the price in a way that's probably not worth it at any point of the journey. So I don't know, 2 pieces of advice, many of which I've learned through not following. So
listen, that's the way we learn them, is that we think we're smarter than the advice we got, and then we realize, I should have listened to that. So
I have this one advisor who always gives me advice, and he's always right in 6 months. I mean, always. Like, I never follow it, but in 6 months, I'm always doing what he said. And so I learned that he has this like 6-month vision beyond, and I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, sometimes you have to take those 6 months. Then maybe next time it'll be 5 months, and then
One day, maybe.
Never know. So again, hey, I just want to thank you so much for being here and taking time out to share with the audience your journey and your, just some of the touch points that we talked about. I think we're really, people are really going to take this and use this, because I think it's a lot of, there's a lot of feelings from a business owner when you're talking about tech. You understand you need tech, but you don't know what tech I need. You want to do the best for your customers. You don't know how to get there. And I think a lot of these things that you touched on today tactically are going to help people again. So I want to thank everybody. And for all of you that are here at the end of this, again, please don't forget to subscribe. Click the little button down below. Every week we post out a new episode. As always, I would appreciate you sharing it out. There are a lot of people that can use this type of information. And before we go again, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Glenn. It's fantastic.
Okay, great. And to the audience, as I say at the end of every episode, you're in charge, but now you have some new tools to help you become more successful. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time around.